If you owned an original Nintendo Switch and liked realistic cars in your racing games, you are probably familiar with the Gear Club Unlimited series. Gear Club Unlimited 1 and 2 both came out on the Nintendo Switch amidst a sea of kart racers offering realistic cars and somewhat realistic physics and racing action. I thought the first game was alright as a first effort. The second game kind of left a lot to be desired. But when Gear Club Unlimited 3 was announced for the Nintendo Switch 2, I got interested, man. I like racing games. I want to play racing games on my Nintendo Switch 2, especially ones with real cars. So how did this game turn out? We're going to talk about that in today's video because there are some things I like about it, there are some things I don't really like about it, and some things that kind of fall into the middle. Now, one of the main components of this game is the story mode. Essentially, some guy wants you to kind of revive the old midnight club from the 90s and Japanese culture with racing and stuff like that. And so you win a little tournament, and then you go to Japan and link up with people. You end up back in France after a while. It's fine. It's really a catalyst for one main thing, and that is buying vehicles and upgrading the vehicles, whether it's via cosmetics or via like engine upgrades and stuff like that, because that will actually play a role in something we'll talk about a little bit later in a different game mode. But that's essentially how it breaks down. You do different events, races, duels, stuff like that. It's a little bit half-assed because like there's no voice acting or anything. Everything is done with like a comic book-esque cutscene, and I use comic book kind of loosely because it's kind of just like a still image of a person with text and like a background on it. But it's fine. Like I am not expecting something gripping narrative in a racing game. I'm playing a racing game to experience the cars, experience the different game modes, experience the different locations, and all of that sort of good stuff. Now, when it comes to the racing, of course, there are different types of racing that you will be doing throughout this game, both in the story mode and in the free play mode. One of the cool things about this game are highway races, which will immediately make you think of games such as Tokyo Extreme Racer, which I'm a big fan of. You essentially do a highway racing duel in either France or Japan, where both of you guys have a life bar, and you're having to drain your opponent's life bar by pulling away from them, driving faster than them, all of that sort of stuff. It's a very riveting experience because not many games kind of offer this style of racing unless it's something like Tokyo Extreme Racer is. Swimming, as it's called in the States, isn't really like well received by people, and you shouldn't try this stuff at home. But I do think it adds a fun layer to this game that many other games don't have, because it's a really different feeling of racing than just going around on a traditional track and doing that sort of stuff. Beyond the story mode, you have various game modes that you could do, like I said, and surprisingly, there's quite a few tracks. There are tracks that are sprint tracks that's just kind of get from one area to another, more like toge tracks as far as the layouts of them for the most part. And then there's more loop-based tracks that are a bit more of a traditional thing. Different segments of tracks make up the loop that you go on. And then there are also highway races, as I mentioned. You can adjust different things like time of day, how many opponents, what sort of opponents you want to race against. And then, of course, you have your car list. The car list is pretty interesting. It's nothing groundbreaking. There's only like 40 plus cars in the game, but I do think it has a decent enough variety of stuff, from your daily drivers to American stuff like a Mustang to more high-end stuff, your Porsche, your BMW, a, supercar here and there. It's a decent variety of cars, and all of them do feel and sound different. If you're getting a Ford Mustang, you're trying to take out a crowd of people at a car meet or something like that, whereas something like a Dodge Viper feels like it wants to kill you instead of killing innocent bystanders that are at the said car meet. I do like the tracks themselves as well. I think that there's a good variety of stuff, like I said, when it comes to toge stuff or when it comes to more traditional racing and all that sort of stuff. It's honestly pretty fun. You know, the racing itself feels decent enough. The cars do all kind of handle differently. And, you know, it's a racing game. It's a racing game with realistic cars, and it does a decent job of doing stuff like that. Where I think the game definitely excels, though, is going back to that highway racing, because look at this, folks. This is straight out of Tokyo Extreme Racer. This is scratching an itch that I have deeply. As you can see, you do have multiple car angles that you could choose from as well, such as a cockpit view, a behind the camera view, a first person view. Whatever your racing ways are, however you like to race your cars is how you can do them. Now, I did mention another game mode, but I haven't really alluded to it yet, and that is the sort of online portion of it. If you're thinking that there's going to be traditional racing online, spoiler alert, there is not. You can race locally with people that are in the same room as you, but as far as online interactions, there's really nothing here except for one thing. And the funny thing about it is, the game doesn't really tell you that this exists. I actually noticed it during a loading screen where it popped up in the upper corner that said, hey, there's online time trials. And I was like, wait, there is? You never told me this. I assumed the time trial was just to get your time. So basically, with the time trial system in the game, the cars all have a different level from like D to S. D is going to be your lower end vehicles. S is going to be your higher end vehicles. And every course, every track, every sprint, everything that's in the game does indeed have a time trial attached to it with an online leaderboard system. Now, I did a couple of them, but there was like nobody else on the leaderboard. I don't know if the leaderboard just hasn't been turned on quite yet or anything like that, but that was something I thought was kind of weird as far as all that sort of stuff is concerned. But what's cool about this game, and something that I actually like, is going back to the story mode. When you upgrade your car in the story mode, of course, you're doing things like cosmetic upgrades, engine upgrades, aerodynamic upgrades. That actually gives you a specific vehicle that you can also use in the free play mode. So if you've souped up like your Honda BRZ, which, I mean, that should be the first car that you choose in the game. It's the best starter car, in my opinion. Then you can use that souped-up BRZ to do things like the time trials, as long as it's still within the range of the letter that you want it to be in. Obviously, you don't want a souped-up BRZ to jump classes or anything like that, but I actually like that because it actually makes it feel like the vehicle that you've been working on, that you've been tinkering with on the single player stuff, does kind of play a role in additional things outside of just the traditional races that you're doing in story mode. You can actually use it online. This is another mode that I didn't mention. This is called Highway Rush. You have the life bar at the top of the screen, and essentially you're just trying to complete the race in order to not relieve your life bar and stuff like that. It's honestly pretty challenging, but man, it's just so much fun. As you notice, I kind of keep going back to this, and well, that's going to play a role within this game. Now let's talk about controls, because some Nintendo Switch 2 games allow you to use a GameCube controller, which of course has analog triggers, meaning that you can control the throttle and brakes much easier. Unfortunately, Gear Club Unlimited 3 does not do that, and I think that's a missed opportunity. Essentially, what you're having to do is you're having to feather the throttle and feather the brake in order to drive around. You don't want to just mash it down willy-nilly because, you know, if you have the assists turned on, then it's fine. There's a couple assists you can do in the settings of the menu. But, you know, you're not getting that same level of control that you would get with analog triggers. I'm not sure why they didn't think to do that or anything like that. It doesn't seem like it's a super huge deal to incorporate that, but that definitely bothered me quite a bit. And, you know, you got to get used to it, but you can get used to it. Like, it's still playable for sure, but I think it would have been a little bit of a better experience with an analog controller being able to be used. And, of course, we got to talk about graphics and presentation. And here's where things are kind of weird. So, there are two graphical modes in this game. There's a performance mode and a quality mode. Everything I've been showing you so far has been performance mode, which is 60 frames per second. Now, I'm not saying the game looks bad, but at times it can look a bit crunchy, and you see lots of pop-up and weird effects around stuff within the level, like the trees and stuff like that, and it can be very distracting. Now, when you choose graphics mode, it does look better, but it also halves the frame rate, but everything does look a bit sharper. When you're playing this game in handheld mode, on performance mode, it even gets crustier than it does when you're playing it on the standard thing. I put it side by side here so you could kind of see the differences with things like the foliage, the ground itself, the vehicle, and all that sort of stuff. But when playing in handheld mode, I actually choose quality mode and take the dip in the performance because it just doesn't look very great in handheld mode. I think that's something they could tighten up from a graphical perspective, both on docked mode and in handheld mode. So hopefully there are some patches that come along for this to sort of rectify that. Because honestly, I don't think it's a bad looking game, and I don't think it's a bad game. Is it a great game? No. Is it a good game? Is it a solid game? Sure. On a system like a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox, you have so many racing games at your disposal. On the Nintendo Switch 2, it's pretty much this and Grid. And, like, Grid is awesome. I love Grid, but sometimes you want something a little bit different. You want a more of a street racing thing, and this does scratch an itch for me. Now, if it didn't have the highway stuff, I would not like this game at all. But I keep coming back to the highway racing and getting my Tokyo Extreme Racer on, and it feels just so much fun. So those are my thoughts on Gear Club Unlimited 3. It's a $50 game. If you like what you see, you'll probably like the game. If you don't like what you see, you probably won't like the game. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Later.